Why is it so hard to get sponsors as a champion in a small sport? Hi, my name is JP, and this is episode 4 of The Stride. Okay, so we all know that sports sponsorship in general is not doing too badly. Like overall, it's a $70 billion business and it's growing at a healthy rate. And the top athletes in the world are definitely making a comfortable living out of sports. But if we look outside of that 1% of the top 1%, it's not such a pretty picture. And why is that? Well, I've discovered a couple of reasons why the situation in sports sponsorship has been developing in an unhealthy direction, actually for a long time already, about 10, 20 years. So instead of becoming more inclusive and more diverse, the world of sports sponsorship is actually becoming more and more exclusive. And I've discovered some of the reasons why. And this is pretty important information for any athlete or any sports organization who are operating in an emerging sport in their region. Now, remember, the sort of size and or dominance or influence of a specific sport is always subjective to the geography where they operate. So I know that I keep using this as an example, but think of American football. So in United States, top level American football is of course huge, but if you look at it in Europe, for example, American football tends to be very much a niche sport. So you cannot sort of judge a book by its cover alone. You need to know where the book is in this case. Okay, so let's say that you're an athlete or you lead a sport organization in a geography in a country where that sport isn't very huge. So why is it difficult to get sponsors? Well, there's basically two main reasons for this. One is, of course, the limited amount of reach that your sport has in terms of spectators. But this isn't really necessarily a problem. It's only a problem if you try to frame your sport or yourself as an athlete as like if you go into direct competition with the Champions League or the tennis Grand Slam tournaments, like or some other like hugely popular mass spectator sport event or athlete who competes at that level. Um, you shouldn't do that, first of all, because what you should be actually sort of pitching to the sponsors is the growth story, the story of transformation, growing from small to medium and from medium to big, and how that journey is, and telling a special story, telling a story which has more surprises than the traditional sport story of elite sports in mass spectator sports. So, but the second problem is then the problem of validation and recognition. And this is a more tricky problem to solve. I'll tell you a story of how I discovered this problem. So, first of all, I've been a semi professional athlete in a number of different sports. For example, I think that the first sport where I competed was climbing back in the 1990s when it was very, very small in Finland, especially in early 90s, or sled dog sports, American football in Finland, and so on. So I've experienced this pain from an athlete perspective. Now, mind you, I've never been very successful as an athlete, but I have been somewhat successful in getting sponsors. But I think it's mostly because I spent a lot of time and thought in chasing those sponsorships. And well, maybe I should have been spending more time practicing the sport, but I made a decision to sort of spend a lot of effort on getting those sponsors to make sure that I have enough sponsors to sort of support my athletic endeavors. And so I was fairly successful there, but I did discover a problem. So well, first of all, there's the normal problems of trying to reach the right people and so on. But these problems are the same for anyone trying to sell anything in the world. But even when I got in touch with the brands that I thought that I could have a good pitch for, a good story for, like I had really spent time on thinking in advance, like how I could support their business objectives, how I could fit in there, what I could like provide them with, how they could use me as a brand ambassador and stuff like that. I kept stumbling on this barrier. Let's call it a barrier or a challenge. That basically they said that, yeah, okay, so it sounds that okay, you're competing at the national level, and that's very good, but like I don't know your sport. Like is that a real sport? Like is it like how do I know as a brand manager that you even are who you say you are? I'm sorry, but like it's easier for me to go and look at a soccer player or a ice hockey player or a tennis player or a golf player who are already in the news. I know who they are, so it's easier for me to justify spending money on that athlete there because I know they are who they are and I understand what they're doing. But you're coming from this obscure little sport I never heard of. Like it sounds that you're doing a good job, but I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say no. That was sort of the rationale. Okay, so fast forward some time, some years. I got my first position as a senior leader in a national sports federation. So I became a vice president of one of the sports federations in Finland, and I thought that okay, now I have my chance to fix this. That I'm going to work very very hard to build up this authority and authenticity and legitimacy of this sport, so that my athletes will have an easier time having this discussion with the sponsors. So I came up with this strategy that as a sports federation, now we're going to invest time and money in creating press releases of every major competition. Make sure that we get all the names correct. So we have the time and place of the competition. We make sure that we communicate that yeah, it's an official competition and this is the national level or a national championship event. These are the different classes of competition. Here are the results. These were the final times or scores or whatever. Like we ticked all the boxes to create like really high quality press releases, and then we basically kicked off a campaign to reach out to all the major news outlets in the country, both national and regional news outlets, and send them those press releases after every competition, every official competition in a standardized format. And we even hired a press release company to do the sending for us, so that we know that at least we're not getting stuck on any spam filters anywhere. So on the surface, I thought that okay, yep, this is a solid plan. I've done my homework. I've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, or how you say that. And now we'll just sit back and wait. And so we did, and nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. After a year, or even after like 2 years, we couldn't trace a single story on any news media in the country back to those press releases. So of course, like I was like, oh shit, like I failed my athletes. I thought that I had a good idea here, but it just doesn't seem to work. So, but I don't know why it's not working. So I knew that okay, now we have amazing athletes doing a good job. We have a proper sports federation governing the sport. We're doing it within the parameters of sports best practices, the best governance principles. We're doing it well. We're documenting and we're communicating actively with the media to get our story across, to get some recognition for our athletes, so that they could go out to the sponsors and talk with the sponsors to get financial support. But we're getting stuck here. So then the next thing that I did was I picked up the phone and I started calling these news outlets. So typically I would be contacting the sports division of a newspaper or some other news media. And I started from from the small ones because I figured that, okay, I've never had these discussions before, so I want to get a little bit of practice first. So I started with the small regional newspapers. It was hell of a hard to get hold of these peoples, the editors, but over time I managed to start getting hold of them and having these discussions. And the first, like, I would say 5, 6, 7, 8 discussions were completely useless because I would reach the editor, I would make my case. They would say that, yeah, okay, yeah, sorry, we've just been super busy. I'll take a look at that a little bit later, and basically saying, like, don't call us, we'll call you, and they never did. Again, this part of the operation yielded exactly zero results over a couple of months, even though we were in a busy competition season at the time. So even getting a hold of these editors didn't do anything really. And but then finally, I got the hold of the head of sports division for the largest newspaper in the country. And I suppose that I was actually like super lucky to even be able to get hold of that person, and that was actually a useful conversation because, like, by this time, like, I had a routine already of how I make my case. So I went into my sort of elevator pitch of the sport, and after like 90 seconds or something like that, the sports chief editor just cut me off, and basically, okay, obviously I'm paraphrasing, this was a few years ago, this discussion, but it basically, what he said was something along these lines that, hey, I'm going to cut you off right there. So it's what you're saying sounds wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But okay, here's my problem. Like, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you're calling from. I don't know the sport that you're talking about. I basically never heard of it. And if I did, or if I heard of it, I don't remember it anymore. And furthermore, do you want to take a wild guess of how many full-time employees I have working for me? And I sort of sheepishly responded that no, but I suppose that I'm going to find out. And he said, yeah, well, I have exactly 3 full-time employees here. Now, between these 3 full-time employees, we cover the national sports, we cover the international sports, we cover the summer sports, the winter sports, we cover Formula One, we cover Bundesliga, Champions League, we cover like each and every one of the major sports in Finland. Now, do you want to take a wild guess which one of these 3 people I'm going to take away from their busy schedule where they're already working full-time or overtime all of the time, and ask them to fact check everything that you just told me? And I said, okay, I hear you loud and clear. I think I understand your problem. So the problem is that, and this is, as I told you, this development has been now going on for 10 or 20 years. And I did a little bit of digging into this. We can sort of trace the roots of this problem back to the birth of the social media era. So when Facebook and others like it started getting the attention of the people, the traditional medias, the newspapers and the like, started losing their income, basically their revenue. As a result of that, the team sizes in those outlets were cut year by year. You would lose your head count. So like 20 years ago, a major newspaper sports division could have like 20 people working for them, and now they have 2 or 3. And in order to be able to actually perform their job, what they've replaced the people with is automation. So now they're relying more and more on algorithms to drive the stories. They're picking up signals basically from social media and then working on that. But the problem with the algorithm is that algorithms are really crappy at validating anything. And because they don't have the headcount, they can't really like expand the scope of their operation. They can't journey into unknown waters because they just don't have the time for that. So it's like the diminishing revenues caused by social media and the increase of automation create this very toxic environment where actually everyone ends up repeating the same story. So like if we take this development ad infinitum or ad absurdum, at the end of the day, in a not so distant future, for every news cycle, there's going to be exactly one sports story which is shared globally and discussed globally by everyone. That's the regression to mean that algorithms do. They find what's the most engaging thing today, and then everyone just piggybacks on that. Everyone gets on the bandwagon, and everyone just maybe tries to find a slightly different angle, but they're all like dancing. It's like the game of what's a musical chairs or something like this. That's what happens when you kick off all of your people, all of the people who actually have professional skills and expertise and time of the day to actually find new stories, and you replace them with algorithms. It's a game of musical chairs. That's what's happening in the news media, basically. But it's not just the news media. This is also happening in the brands, the sponsors. Like even well-performing brands with growing healthy revenues are relying increasingly on algorithms to do their job. But the problem is that algorithms, just like ChatGPT, it doesn't create anything new. It doesn't make any significant new discoveries. It just regurgitates what's already out there that people are validating already. And the validation is based on nothing but mass appeal. And you can't build any new mass appeal if you're just relying on algorithms. So this is really the crux of the problem. Now, if you go back now to how I framed this problem, that now you're an athlete or a leader in an emerging sport, what the hell are you going to do about this? Not much. You can't do anything. I tried as an athlete. I tried as a senior leader, even as a president of a federation, and I tried in 2 different sports federations, and there wasn't really anything that I could do, even if I prioritized all of my resources. Even by getting the sport on national TV, I couldn't break this vicious cycle that you're only popular if you're already popular, right? Because I could only, like, by redirecting all of the available resources, I could get like the sport on mass TV for one showing, one glorious 35 minutes or something like that. It doesn't tip the scale. It doesn't change it because it doesn't address the underlying problem that the media and the brands don't have the time of the day to get to know you, to get to trust you. And if they can't trust you, they can't give you money. Okay, so as I said, this was some years ago. And this, like, finding out this problem, getting to the root of this problem is what got me started on very long thought or thinking process that took me years to figure out. Like, I think that this is a significant problem in the world that needs to be fixed, and it's worth fixing, because if this can be fixed, we can have so many more inspiring stories. We can have so much more meaning shared across people. We can improve not just the lives of the athletes, but also the audiences and everyone involved. We can find new human potential and explore it fully if we can just fix this problem of trust in sports, regardless of the size of the sport. So that's what nextstride.com is built around. That's the core solution to this problem, is that we have figured out a way to build trust, communicate it effectively across all of these stakeholders. And we've already been talking this through with all these the sports federations, with the athletes, with the brands and everyone, and they agree that yeah, if you can get that like working, then yeah, that's actually good. We would actually trust that. And now we're on the very verge of closing the first cycle here, and then expanding it from there. But it's I just wanted to take this opportunity in this the Stride podcast to tell you how we discovered this problem and exactly what the problem is and why it exists. So I think that we know an uncomfortable truth about the world, but at least we have an idea of how to fix this. So, okay, thank you for listening. This has been episode 4 of The Stride. I'm JP, and if you like where this is going to like going towards, please subscribe to this podcast. If you are an athlete in emerging sport in Europe and you need financial support, go to nextride.com and we can probably help you. Also, if you're a brand looking for effective, like cost-effective and high return on investment brand ambassadors, go to nextride.com. We can definitely help you. Also, if you're a sports federation leader and you want to learn what you can do for your athletes to enable your sponsors and brands to trust them more, go to nextride.com and get in touch. Because we can definitely help you. And so until next time, thank you very much for listening. You've been listening to episode 4 of The Stride.